as the CEO or the founder of a business, like you're the shield. So the reality is that yeah, the startup roller coaster is super fucking intense. Like it is brutal emotionally. But you can never allow that type of emotional roller coaster to infect your employee population. You just can't. Nobody can work under those types of conditions. Nobody can be productive. Nobody can think long term. And the reality is that the employees just don't have the same long-term economic benefit from their ownership as the founders do. So your job as the CEO is to act as a shield to the chaos.
Willie, welcome to the One Away Show.
Thank you for having me, Brian. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So Willie, what is the one away moment that you want to share with us today?
So today we're going to talk about my experience building a business, having that business deeply impacted by the onset of the coronavirus in 2020, how we navigated that moment, how we persisted, how we acted with resilience and integrity, and how we carried ourselves through those very challenging times to ultimately drive towards a successful outcome.
All right, we can't wait to exit my seat here to understand what you went through. So why don't you give us some context? What was the business? What were you doing pre-COVID? And then what happened that maybe created a pause for what the heck are we going to do next?
So I'll kind of start a little bit even earlier than that, tell you a little bit my personal background. I think that'll be a nice way for us to lead in here. But I grew up in Southern California. I was really fortunate to be accepted to Duke University during my senior year of high school. I'd never been to the American South. I had only ever been on the East Coast in New York City. I saw Duke for the first time on orientation day, and it ended up being kind of the greatest experience of my life. Many things happened there. I met my wife. We have two beautiful children now. I met my co-founder in my first business. I ultimately met my co-founder in Press On Ventures as well. But for the purposes of today's discussion, we'll kind of just start with my first business, which was called Squadup. And so I went to Duke, graduated, started my career in financial services. Everybody in the undergraduate population at Duke wants to be an investment banker or management consultant. That's the mind virus that kind of infects that undergraduate population. I was absolutely infected by that. And I started my career as an equity research analyst. I ended up leaving and starting my first software company in 2014, which was called Squadup, or is called Squadup, I should say. And, I was 24 years old. I joke now I had more energy than sense, which weirdly is maybe the right cocktail for startup number one. But we got started building a business, competing with Eventbrite and Ticketmaster and trying to build a self-service ticketing platform to support all sorts of event organizers. It's a very challenging business in general, and a very competitive one. With that said, we were very persistent and we were able to kind of develop a little bit of traction. We had raised a small amount of venture capital out of the gate, but had quickly realized that this probably wasn't a venture scale business. And our modus operandi was $1 profitable. We wanted to grow as fast as humanly possible while still controlling our destiny, our own destiny. And the reality about $1 profitable is you can't actually do that, right? You don't actually end up $1 profitable. It's hard to hit that mark. So you're plus 10 grand, minus 8 grand. You're basically running at break even, but trying to grow the business as much as possible, which is great. And it's a great way to kind of do what we needed to do. But it's not like we had a big balance sheet to fall back on. So we started finally making progress. And over the course of, several years had built the business brick by brick into some significant scale. And in February of 2020, we had our biggest individual month ever. We had finally broken $400,000 in monthly revenue. We were very, very profitable all of a sudden. The business was past right around that $5 million run rate. That's just the high watermark for middle market bootstrapped SaaS companies. And that was in February of 2020. Fast forward to March, just a couple of weeks later, and, we do live events. So people aren't getting together during COVID, right? But if you recall, the first kind of coronavirus outbreaks happened in San Francisco and Seattle. So we were ticketing the Seattle Auto Show, and we got a phone call saying hey, there's this virus. The city's making us shut down. We're not going to be doing the event. And I remember getting that phone call and thinking to myself oh, wow, this sucks, but Like as long as like this event and this event and this event and this event that are all in New York City or in Florida or in Texas or wherever don't get canceled, like we're going to be okay. That was like March 3rd or March 4th. By March 12th, of course, like the world had stopped. If you recall, March 12th was the day that Disneyland shut down. It was the day the NBA shut down. It was the day the market fell 1,000 points or whatever it was. And like it became very, very clear that we were actually going to be moving into this like serious pandemic phase. And hindsight's 2020. We know what we know now about COVID. Maybe we overreacted a little bit out of the gate, but in March of 2020, like this was a very scary time. The prevailing narrative was like if you go outside, you're going to kill your grandmother, and like people were really nervous. Meanwhile, like our revenue, which had never been higher, went from in the 400s in February to literal zero in March. That was a really tough pill to swallow emotionally, but it was also from a tactical perspective like an unmanageable situation. We were running $1 profitable, and we had a very limited backstop in order to like hold the business together while we went through a period where there was functionally no revenue. So we had no choice but to furlough or terminate many of our employees. And that was one of the hardest days of my life. We had 17 employees that had to be let go. We're doing it on the phone with a lawyer present. Lawyer charges $600-700 an hour. We don't have any money. And like you need to have a lawyer there because this is like a little bit from an employment law perspective. Like you got to make sure that you're protected. And we're basically telling people, hey, like no longer have a job. You can go on Cobra. And by the way, like your health insurance situation, like after that, like I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. You have to find a new job because there's a global pandemic going and like would be terrible to not have health insurance. So this was terrible for me, like emotionally gut wrenching, one of the worst days of my entire life. Got through it, ended up securing the various loans that were available to companies during coronavirus or COVID or whatever, the PPP and the EIDL, et cetera. And those things really enabled us to stay alive. But we kind of went down to a tiny team. We retained only the talent that we felt we could never replace, mostly engineering. And we used this time to like clear tech debt, work on things that had been in our backlog, and we survived miraculously through this COVID period. Many of our competitors did not. Similarly, we went through this period of kind of like there was inflation during COVID. I'm sure we all remember. Um, and there was like when people came back to live events, they came back with kind of an eye towards revenge. There was this revenge buying movement that was happening. So we survived this period, and we get kind of back into business, and everything starts to go really well. We'd learned to do more with less. We had been able to raise our prices. We had picked up new customers because some of our competitors had gone out of business. And the business now had gotten bigger from a revenue perspective than it was previously. And we had become extremely profitable because we had learned how to do more with less. So we continued to build the business. And then in September of 2023, we were around 7 million in revenue, very profitable. And we ended up selling the company to private equity. Had a really nice exit to a middle market private equity firm in Chicago called Performant Capital, and they've been amazing partners ever since. They bought the business. My co-founder is running the company today. I have stayed involved, but they've continued to kind of build upon what we had and acquire additional companies and build more features and chase new markets. And it's been incredible to watch this business continue to thrive with very limited input from me. But all this to say, like that is my one away moment where, I had been building this business for years, from 2014 to 2020, 6 years, brick by brick, and had gone through every struggle that every entrepreneur goes through. I had no money. I had no money in the bank for the business. Go to cocktail parties. People ask you what you do. You tell them, you see their eyes glaze over like, oh my God, this poor son of a bitch. He's really screwed. And, endured that, had finally gotten to a place where we were okay and doing well and super excited. And then COVID happened and it just cut our knees out from under us. But we were resilient and we believed in ourselves more than we believed in the idea. We believed that we could navigate this. And we ultimately came back bigger, stronger, more profitable, and ended up having an amazing exit to private equity. So, and that has set up my entire career, that whole experience.
Wow. First off, I want to give it to you. I also know the moment of being, do you press on or do you quit? No pun intended. And it's scary as hell. And I think that coupled with you were a broke founder all these years to 400K in the bank to being broke again, like the roller coaster of and the belly aching feeling of that. Uh, I can't even imagine what that would have been like, right? Because it's like you're just trucking along for these years, just brick by brick, and it's like, is this all gonna be worth it? And so one, I just want to say, like, what a story. The question I have for you is, like, why did you press on? Like, what made you believe in yourself to say, you know what, this is worth fighting for, or my this is worth my time to keep going through, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, like, reality is, like, not rational, right? Like, there it's somewhat ego, and I'm gonna tell you a story that, like, is a bit silly, but it's the truth of what happened. Right around this time, I was, like, so depressed, stressed out, working my ass off, just doing everything I possibly could, and I felt this feeling of, like, "Hey, like, should we just throw in the towel and just give up? Like, we've spent a lot of time on this, like, maybe it just doesn't need to work." And around the same time, I was watching Netflix, and I just randomly put on like a climbing documentary, and the documentary was called Into the Void, and it's a story of two climbers who are climbing somewhere, some godforsaken place filled with snow, and one of them falls into a crevasse. So climber falls into a crevasse. One person's at the top. Crevasse is hundreds of feet deep. The guy at the top assumes the guy who fell in is dead. He stays for a while. He's calling down to him, but doesn't hear anything. So the guy at the top says, "Okay, I gotta go. Like I'm not gonna die here too." And he starts going back to camp or wherever it was. It turns out the guy that fell into the crevasse had actually survived. And of course, at the bottom of this crevasse, there was no way for him to get out. Like he's not gonna climb up the rope. But inside of the crevasse, there was a small tunnel. And he had a choice. I can either die where I am and starve to death right at the bottom of this crevasse. No one's ever going to come get me. Or I can try to crawl through this tunnel. And this tunnel may collapse. It may lead to nowhere. I may die inside of this tunnel. I have no idea. But turns out that tunnel led to getting out of the crevasse and back onto the slope of the mountain. And the message that I heard from that was the only way out is through. The reality is that when you're 6 years into a startup, you've raised money from professional investors, from friends, from family. It is almost impossible emotionally to say, I'm just going to cut the cord and I'm done with this. And the message that I had to myself was always the only way out is through. So I just put my head down and I woke up every morning and I did the same thing over and over again. I went back to work. And eventually we crawled through that tunnel and we started to see some light.
Yeah. Dude, so many chills just ran down my spine. The image of a guy falling into a crevice, crawling through a tunnel, like that is a very real feeling to what you just described and crawling your way to light. Um, and It makes so much sense why that resonated with you. And ironic on the timing. It's weird how we sometimes get the
The
message.
universe sends us signs. Yeah.
Yeah, we get the message we need when we need it the most. So, yeah, man, super powerful. So, I, I want to also understand too. You said this moment forced us to be lean and like work on backlog features. Like, take me to the day after the day or the week after you laid off 17 people, and you were just probably emotionally shot, financially just stressed out of your mind. Like you said, I got back to work. Like, what was getting back to work? How did you know what to do to focus on? Like, talk to me.
I think there's kind of two things here. Like the first thing is that like as the CEO or the founder of a business, like you're the shield. So the reality is that like yeah, the startup roller coaster is super fucking intense. Like it is brutal emotionally. But like you can never allow that type of emotional roller coaster to infect your employee population. You just can't. Nobody can work under those types of conditions. Nobody can be productive. Nobody can think long term. And the reality is that the employees just don't have the same long term economic benefit from their ownership as the founders do. So your job as the CEO is to act as a shield to the chaos. So yeah, it was a chaotic moment. Everybody knew we were in trouble, but the people that stayed, I gave them a very, big pep talk and said, "Hey guys, like here's the reality. We don't know what's going to happen. Right now we have enough money in the bank to cover the people in this room for this much time. And during that time, nothing else is happening. We have a unique opportunity to look at our product right now, to look at our code base, and to do the things we never had time to do before. So I want to encourage all of you to think and be thoughtful about how we spend this time, to think about this as a little bit of a rest period where, we're not going to work 20 hours a day. We're going to work like normal people while we're waiting for the world to come back. And we're going to chip away at all this stuff that we never had time to do. And it kind of felt like we were starting the company over again. It was like, hey, like there's no revenue, there's no customers to deal with, there's no sales process going on. Like it's just pure product and engineering. And that was actually weirdly fun. And like being together on Zoom, of course, and like going through this hardship and then being like, hey, like we're actually in a stable spot right now. Like, yeah, like this is not good. This is not where we want to be, but we're okay for the next, I don't remember what it was, but like 12 to 18 months. So like let's make the most of this and like really kind of jump in here and start thinking through everything that we have in our Jira board that we never wanted to touch, but we have to do, and all the things that have to happen. And that's what we did. We were productive in that period. We were a team above anything else. And I tried to act as the shield. So, like, as chaotic and horrific as this moment was, I really never let anybody, other than my co-founder, in on like how desperate we were. I tried my best to just keep everybody really happy. It was like, I was basically playing music on the deck of the Titanic, right? So like as everyone's boarding the lifeboats, I'm on the violin making sure everyone's having, a nice last trip here. But that was how we did it.
I, I love that. It's so good. Um, Playing music on the deck of the Titanic. Dude, that's says a lot about you. Uh, so as you were talking about that, the thing that I was thinking about going through my head was, all right, Willie, this is great and all. Um, you protected your team, but clearly, like this growth and this dire circumstance creates a level of growth inside you. And so my question is like, if you were to look back on that period and look at where you are today, like what did you learn about Willie and what Willie had inside of him that you maybe didn't know at the time?
I've always been a grinder. I've always like been able to suffer. That's always been my thing. I never felt like I was the smartest guy in the room. I always felt like I was the hardest worker or the most strategic. So I knew that about myself going in. I knew that I was going to be able to grind it out. I did not expect to be able to grind it out for 10 years, which was, what it took to ultimately build this business. And the gut punch of like finally having some positive traction and then having COVID happen was like really, really hard for me. But what I'd say I learned about myself is that, like, I'm even more resilient than I thought I was. That when I put my mind to something, I can believe in myself fully because I can solve problems given the fullness of time. I may not get there the fastest, but if given the fullness of time, I will solve the problems. And I talk to startup founders about this a lot all the time now. Like, hey, like be $1 profitable, turn the shot clock off. If you really believe in yourself and you had infinite time, could you solve this problem? It's like, yeah, of course I could solve this problem if I had infinite time, but I don't. It's like, okay, well, like, what do you need to do to be $1 profitable so you can turn the shot clock off? And I think that was like a really important tactical learning, but also like a personal learning as well, is that like, hey, I can believe in myself because I can figure these things out and I have done hard things. So I think that was all like hugely positive for my personal self growth. But like, the other thing is that like the hardest thing you've ever been through is the hardest thing you've ever been through. So when you see people who spend their lives totally pampered, have never really been challenged, and they deal with a small problem and they blow up over it because they've never really dealt with that type of adversity, like I wouldn't put myself directly in that like extreme camp, but like by having gone through this really hard thing, it prepared me for the next really hard thing that I was going to go through, which like came later. And like, it's a whole nother story for another podcast, but like, that really kind of inoculated me to like, hey, like you can be max stressed, max tired, and still have enough clarity to go for like 7 or 8 months. And like just that knowledge that like, hey, I have that in there. Like if I need it, I can literally go full bore for 7 or 8 months. I don't know if I can go past 7 or 8 months, but like 7 or 8 months of just like pure stress, chaos work, like I know I can do that. I've done it before. I'll do it again if I have to. Like that really helps as you like get into your next thing, right? Because it's like something terrible happens, you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. But it's like, no, 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 I've dealt with something like this before, or something of this level of stress and emotion. I know I can do it.
Yeah, it's great. Dude, so much resonance here. I can't remember our last conversation how much I shared, but much more for us to discuss offline. I know that 7 or 8 months. I also know it over like a 2 year clip as well. Not to say I know it longer. I just like it's awful, and like you come through it. And my question is, all right, you came through the 7 or 8 months, and I'm just asking from like personal experience, like when did you notice things like start to shift, or like, hey, like there is like when you talked about that guy who fell, crawled through the tunnel, saw light, got back on the path, like when did you see like, oh, like there is light at the end of the tunnel? Because it sounds like you were just crawling in the dark for a long time.
We were crawling in the dark for a long time. And then we started talking to some of our event organizers, and they're like, hey, our community really wants to do stuff. And it was like, okay, great. How can we help you organize virtual events? How can we figure out how to do, the South Beach food and wine experience at home? And all of a sudden, we were like in this creative mode of supporting our clients in a way that we had never supported them before, right? Like previously, we're just a technology provider. We're providing the software to sell your tickets online. We're providing the hardware and the software so that you can sell tickets in the box office and scan tickets and do access control. But we're not involved in programming. We're not involved in production or any of those things. But we went to our biggest clients, the South Beach Food and Wine Festivals, the Charleston Food and Wine Festivals, the Tribeca Film Festivals of the world. And we said, hey guys, like, let's get creative. And we really kind of leaned in and helped on the production side of like, hey, how do we put together an event for the world that we're in now? Started to see some tickets getting sold in that vein. And after picking our heads up from that, it was like, okay, we're not out of the tunnel, but I see a little bit of light over there, like just a little bit. It might not be real, but at least for now, there's a little bit of hope. And that went a long way. And then, of course, like the world started reopening, and then there was like another variant, and another this, and another that, and more problems. And like it just was a little bit of an up and down, but for the most part, like that was kind of when we started to see the light, when the customers started coming to us and saying like, hey, let's get creative, let's figure out a way to make this work.
Yeah, dude, I remember COVID so vividly, and it was awful because it was like, yeah, like you got through the storm, and that was like the next thing, and you're like, at some point, you were kind of just like, to hell with it, like rip the mask off, just like go live life. And like, I'm not saying like you shouldn't protect yourself in this, like by all means, but I think there was just like a natural point where people were like, I'm not going to take this anymore. Like, I'm going to take the risk. And if worst comes to worst, like, it's on me. But I think to your point, it's like with COVID, you just kind of had to hang on just enough. And it sounds like you did, when it could have been so easy for event driven businesses to just say, yeah, we're wiped. So I think that's pretty remarkable.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right, you, let's just say, broke for a while, hit 400K in revenue, broke again, saw the light. Like what? And again, I'm kidding around broke, but I'm just like trying to be vivid. What did you like? You said it hit like a rapid growth point again. Like where like did things start to progress, and like what did that growth curve look like? How did it feel? Like what were some of the key, maybe you look back the data points where you can say this ultimately helped us leapfrog here, and this helped us leapfrog there.
Yeah, well, I think there was a couple things that happened, right? Like one, like all the work, like by using that downtime period to like work on our backlog of like tech debt, and like, hey, let's build some internal tools for customer service, and like this feature that like we do manually on the back end, let's turn that into something that can be automated and that a CS rep can just do on their own. we had like become more efficient, right? So like I think the important thing is that like we invested in the things that we knew mattered during this downtime period. We didn't just say like, all right, hands up. We remained productive. So like that was like what set us up for success. The signals that we started to see where we were like, oh, we're going to not only are we going to be okay, but we're actually going to start thriving was really all around same event growth, meaning like festivals that we had done historically were up from their pre-COVID numbers like 20 or 30%. So we had like a whole splat of customers who were not just coming back, but coming back at 20 or 30% larger than they had previous. And once I saw that, I was like, okay, the revenge buying thing is real. Like all these events that are really high quality are going to do super well. Simultaneously, a few of our competitors went out of business, sadly, and we had an opportunity to go and pick up those customers and service them in a way that they hadn't been serviced before. So, like we're growing new logos in that regard. And then we had gone through this period of inflation, right? Where like we had been on the sidelines where inflation had started. And we had like a really strong justification with less competition in the market, with inflation happening, to go out to, and with everything that our customers knew we had been through, to go to them and say, hey, like prices are going up. And by doing that, we expanded margins. So it was really kind of this trifecta of new logos, same year over year growth with our existing clients, and then the ability, both from the macro perspective as well as from the micro perspective, to justify a broad price increase. And as those three things came together, like growth was great, but you also grow like it's pretty easy to grow when you just raise your prices, right? Like that's a completely if you raise your price by 10% and no one churns, you just grew by 10%. So these are things that like really mattered to us. And then ultimately, because we had spent so much time becoming like operationally efficient during COVID, like this we couldn't keep up with the growth from a spending perspective. Historically where we were like, hey, we want to spend every free dollar we can on growth, like we just couldn't do it anymore. Like we didn't have enough growth initiatives that like merited the dollars that we had squirreled away from profitability. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. We're making so much money. We're like actually really profitable. This is like an amazing business. And it was right around then when we were like, okay, we never have to sell this thing. We never have to worry again that, the phone starts ringing with people that want to buy the company.
Hmm. Yeah. Dude, that's got to be such an incredible feeling. I mean, to see, where you came from and then to just see profitability and then be like, oh yeah, like we have an amazing business. We could sell it. We could keep running and rinsing, profits. Like, I mean, freedom. Like how good that must feel as a founder to operate from an expansive place and point of view versus like being on defense every day trying to survive.
Yeah, I mean, I think the corollary to the fact that entrepreneurship is terrible and, the Elon quote, like, eating glass and staring into the abyss, my quote has always been that being an entrepreneur is like a perpetual near-death experience. Um, my the lows are so low, but the highs are so high. Like there is nothing more fun than running a business that's working, and there is nothing worse than running a business that's not.
Dude, 100%. And it is fun once you get the pieces moving in the right direction. So, absolutely. Um, Willie, what inspired you? And now I know you had ultimately, you mentioned earlier in the episode, I decided to exit. And my co founder is still running it. But you ultimately took it through PE and you're not involved in the day to day of the operation anymore. What was the reason for that?
It was really just kind of like what my role was in the company versus my co-founder. Like my co-founder was like really tactical. He ran product and eng. I ran, go-to-market sales, fundraising, general strategy, right? So like with a new owner in the business, like my role was like kind of duplicative and like simultaneously, like I had ambitions to go do something else. I had outside of just this chaos inside of Squadup and the business, like I had like an other chaotic things going on, right? Like I had made the decision to go to business school at night. So like during this whole period where I was like working feverishly, I was also sitting in classrooms at UCLA from 7 to 10 p.m. and doing homework and freaking meeting with to do group projects on silly things that didn't matter. And like that was overwhelming. I'd also bought a house, which was like a stretch, and then the business fell apart. So like I was really stressed out. My wife was pregnant with our first child. Like I had been through a lot. Like and I was just at a point where it was like, "Hey, I need a break." It's been 12 years. I've like been working nonstop for 12 straight years. I've had multiple jobs at the same time. I've kept businesses alive. I've now sold a company. I've got enough dough. Like I can just chill for a second. And that's exactly what I did. And I took like a full year off, like hedonistic post founder year, is what I would call it. And, took my kids to school in the morning and went to the gym in the middle of the day and went to the beach in the afternoon and watched movies late at night and did all the things that, like, you wish you could do, but you can't because you're so busy. And I did that for a full year. And that was important to me. I needed that recharge to think about, what the next mountain to climb was going to be.
Mm. Dude, yeah. I mean, I really relate to that as well. I mean, not having a life and then, you see some light and you're at least you can maybe have a partial bit of a life, but not much of a life. But that, I mean, to know like, hey, like you can go vacation and walk on the beach. You can, but to your point, like I agree with you. Like without the grind and like what you put in, like you wouldn't be able to do that. You would never been able to do that. You would have had to go get a job or you would have had to start something else from scratch. And it's like you didn't. And I think it's like, yeah, I had life circumstances at hand and okay, if I can take some chips off the table, so like, my family can have a quality of life without, passing the stress off to my wife or future kids, like, hey, that's not like a bad idea to get a bit of a nest egg and, be able to build from there. So I can, I love the journey, man. I'm just, it's awesome to hear the stories of pushing through. So
Thank you.
it's cool that you did that. Any, just well, before we transition to the next question, any fun movies or things that you did during this hedonistic year of maybe just de-stressing and letting your nervous system reset?
I like I really got into skateboarding. This is like kind of embarrassing, but like there's this company that makes these skateboards the company's called Elevated Surfcraft. They're based in Mammoth and they make these really cool skateboards that like are carving boards. And like I just like skated for like an hour and a half a day, just like on these carving boards. And I just had so much fun doing it. That was probably the weirdest random hobby I picked up during the period. But yeah, that's probably a good example.
I like it. I like it. That's fun, man. The naps in the middle of the day. I like it, man. I think I'd like to experience that. Maybe in the next 10 years, it'd be good to take 12 months to just,
You'll get there.
you know, we'll get there. We're on the way. But I like the journey now too. So Willie, you had time to relax, reset the nervous system, de-stress, have the family kind of come into its next stage. You've started a fund now. It's called Press On Ventures. I love the name. Why a fund? Why not just go back at it and bang your head against the wall? Like, what was the reason for your decision and why did you land on what you're doing today? Like, walk me down that path.
Yeah, sure. So like the name is like drawn from my startup experience, right? Like press on is a double entendre. Hopefully our capital helps to turn your business on, but also we're looking to back resilient founders who can press on regardless. So that's where the name comes from. And what I really love startups. Like I love the 0 to 1. I think I have a unique skill set there where it's like, hey, how do we define the initial strategy? How do we go get the first 10 customers? How do we tell a big enough story to recruit people to come and work with us? Like, how do we go and raise money? I really love that. And I wanted to stay in that world. But I didn't have something that I was particularly passionate about. And I was also like really nervous to jump with 2 feet into one startup idea because I had just done that and it's 10 years to get out. Like was not ready to jump 2 feet in back to the crevasse and to hit the crevasse floor and get back on my hands and knees and start crawling through the tunnel. So I, either foolishly or correctly, only time will tell, thought, hey, raising a small venture fund and investing in early stage technology and products businesses with amazing teams will allow me to kind of scratch the itch of what I love about startups. But hopefully, this kind of distributed portfolio approach, the diversification approach, reduces my risk and enables me to like not do the crazy sigmoidal up and down of the founder journey. Maybe it's the negative derivative of that crazy sigmoidal chart where I get to ride the roller coaster, but the highs aren't quite as high, but in exchange, I don't have lows that are quite as low. And that was kind of my thinking here was that like I want to be, this is the problem space that I want to be in. I want to, these are the people I want to work with, but I wasn't really ready to go be a CEO again. And so far it's been great. It's been about a year and a half. It's been super fun, great investments in the portfolio, and I've really enjoyed working with our founders. And I think my presumption that like I do have a unique 0 to 1 skill set was right, because I'm really finding that I'm able to help a lot of our founders in these early days.
Yeah. Dude, that's great, man. I mean, I think when you like you love the 0 to 1 of it, which is like a very fun phase, a lot of highs and lows, right? You don't have a lot of stability. To be able to pass that on and like clearly with your skill set to make money on the go to market side and pass that along with a good product, like that's pretty cool, right? To like see that come to life. So I mean, I'm sure if if your founders are more engineering or product focused to start, like they lack the sales side, they lack the go to market side. Oh well, you can get them 0 to 1, and I think that's a pretty neat skill set. And it's neat that you're finding good investments. Now you said you've made some good investments. You like the portfolio. I mean, on our first call of the year, or I know we've talked before, but it seems like you found some good eggs early. Talk to us about how you're what you're investing into, what you like to invest into, kind of where things are going for you with the fund.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you do and who you do it with is just as important as like how successful you can be doing it. I think that's like a really important message. But our focus, as you hear me coughing, I'm going to say our focus at the fund is consumer health, wellness, and longevity, human performance, things that enhance work-life balance, things that are positive for mental health or help you become a better parent. We're really trying to consider the whole person as we make these investments. And we spend about 80% of our time in consumer technology and about 20% of our time in consumer products. And, it's really about the team in the market when you're a pre-seed slash seed investor. A lot of times there's not a ton of data to look at, and you're backing an amazing management team that's trying to make waves in a large market that could support a venture scale business. So that's a lot of the work that we do, and we've made 10 investments so far across a number of categories, but all in this vein of health, wellness, longevity, human performance.
Yeah, that's cool. Why though, like health, longevity, human performance, like
Well,
why
I'm
that
interested in
in
it personally, right? So like I think it's helpful to like invest in things you like find interesting because like you can just spend more time reading about stuff and learn more and have a more comprehensive understanding of the market, right? Like my first job out of undergrad, I was an equity research analyst at a healthcare fund. I covered cardiac and orthopedic devices. It's like not super like up my alley or interesting. Like I could force myself to focus and learn a lot about this. And like I think I'm capable of doing that. But it's a lot easier to do that when you're like personally interested in the subject matter, right? So I think that was like one thing, and it's like relatively small. But two, like it's just great to invest with a tailwind. And like what's happening with consumer wallet share right now? Like people are shifting away from traditional goods and services and towards health, wellness, longevity, and experiences. um, you know, the travel market is exploding. People really value like cool, unique experiences in a way that like nobody has really ever seen before. If you told me 5 years ago that it was going to be common for people to have saunas and cold plunges in their backyards, I tell you, you were fucking crazy. But that's where we're at. So, um, that's really it. Like I'm interested in it personally. There's clearly a shift happening nationwide right now, away from traditional goods and services and towards health, wellness, longevity, and experiences. And we're investing with that kind of gentle tailwind. Of course, that tailwind doesn't, take you all the way to the finish line, but it's helpful when you find great managers who are building great teams that have great products in big markets, and they've got a little bit of wind in their sails. Like sometimes that makes a difference.
Yeah. I mean, so on your note, like it seems like you have a pretty clear idea like where we are as a society. And within that society, like what consumer behavior is. Like, but okay, if you said 5 years ago, you would have said, yeah, right to cold plunges and saunas in your backyard. Well, like, what are you saying, yeah, right to right now that you might actually think could be a possibility to in the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think like the big thing here is just like maintaining maximum mental flexibility in this moment. Like I have never been through a period in technology that feels as crazy as this one does from a change perspective. Like fundamentally, like interface, how we do interface design is changing. How we interact with technology products is changing. Are SaaS products still going to exist? Like we just don't know, right? So I think maximum mental flexibility right now is kind of like the most important thing. And I think, as a founder, like you're very myopic. You have to be like super focused on your business and your market and your customers. But as a venture capitalist, you can kind of open the aperture a little bit. And I think it's really important to be an optimist. So when you hear things that are like, hey, like this is some crazy thing that people are doing, whatever, 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 it's like, don't yuck that person's yum. Like, don't immediately write it off and assume that it's not going to work because you're some sort of genius cynic. Like, have the mental flexibility to have the conversation and learn about it and be curious. um, so I can't always tell you like where the puck's going. I rarely can, I should say. But like what I can do is like have that maximum mental flexibility. I can be an optimist while also being a realist. And just opening the aperture and looking for great people, more than anything else.
Yeah, totally. Uh, I think that's a pretty fair perspective, and I like what you said about not being like how to be a great cynic. And to your point, it's like you probably had 100 people tell you to shut down and bet against you. You know, it's like you had the flexibility yourself, and yeah, you bet on you and figured out the business. So I think that's pretty awesome. Willie, what you were one of the first investors in David Protein Bar, is that right?
No, Jacob's protein bar.
Oh,
Jacob's.
Jacobs. Oh, I'm so sorry, Jacobs. Yes. There we
Yeah,
go.
Jacob's protein bar.
Which my mom literally gave me a box for Christmas of these like amazing protein bars, and I don't know why I said anyways. And she's like, these are really good, and these are like the next best thing, and etc. And little did we know, I should have bought some more since, but because she gave them to me, I didn't get on the subscription. I just, I haven't continued it, but like they were very good. Like, what made you see an opportunity there? You got protein this XYZ on the market, but you decided to bet on a protein bar that has done incredibly well. But why did you take a bet so early?
So I think again, like let's like go back to the topic of like maximum mental flexibility, right? Like I think in general, RFK Jr. is an idiot, but he has some really important points about the food system. And the points that were made during the 2024 election around what is actually in the food that we eat from these mass food manufacturers were 100% accurate. Like these, most things that we eat are filled with shit that is so bad for you. And people were becoming aware of it, right? Like when I was a kid, like this kind of like worry about what you eat thing was like a super progressive, only hippies kind of thing. And what we saw in the 24 election is that actually this is a really big issue for a lot of people. So, like, thematically, we were like, okay, there is a desire from consumers to buy products with real ingredients that didn't come off of some factory floor line somewhere that are filled with seed oils and all sorts of stuff you can't pronounce just to make it taste a little better or preserve a little longer or whatever it may be. So like that like generally made us think that like several categories in CPG were going to be totally remade with better for you products that had simple natural ingredients. And actually, we're investors in Jacobs, as we talked about. But what got me particularly interested in protein bars was David's Bar. David's Bar, the founder of David's Bar, was previously the founder of another major protein bar that was acquired, and they had raised a tremendous amount of money from a bunch of top tier venture funds. And they went and did like a tremendous amount of market education. So they went and spent all this money to go out and tell people like, hey, you should switch protein bars because the protein bar that you're eating is filled with this, 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 and this. And then I start reading the David's label. I'm like, this isn't good either. This is not good for you. So that made us go out and look. And then someone in our network actually introduced us to Jake Levy, who's the founder of Jacob's Bar. And we had a conversation with Jacob. And sometimes you just like meet somebody and you're like, that person has the it factor. Like whatever is going on over there, that person's electric. And that's how we felt about Jake. Both my partner Sean and I kind of separately had met with him, come together. We're like, holy shit, is that the most impressive 23-year-old you've ever met in your entire life? And like the answer was yes. Like this is one of the most impressive young people we've ever encountered. Thematically, what he was doing was like in line with what we had seen with the Maha movement and this kind of desire to remake some CPG categories with better ingredients. And then the market education had been functionally paid for by our biggest competitor. So when we looked at that, we were like, okay, this feels like something. And that business has just been an up and to the right story ever since we invested. It's just every quarter, more and more sales. Everything right now is, a lot of it's direct to consumer. We're in a bunch of doors as well now. And we were right about Jake. He's been not just an amazing brand evangelist and product person, but he's also been like a great leader who's learned a lot on as he's gone, has been open to learning, and has brought amazing people around him. Doesn't feel threatened to bring in really high quality people who know more than he does in things that he really needs help in. So that kind of quiet confidence in conjunction with someone who we really see as like an electric, positive, amazing leader was just enough to get us excited to participate in that Jacobs financing.
Yeah, super interesting. When you talk about, so I mean, I think it's like you said, I felt the it factor, and then it sounds like along the way he's proven with different variables, like, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. That says, hey, like, he's going to make it, or at least get extremely far. When you said though, when you first met him, he was so impressive at 23 years old. Like, what was it that was like he's got the it factor? Like, what did you see so quickly?
It's hard to describe, right? Like I think the joke is like it's like porn, right? I can't describe it to you, but I know when I see it. Like this is like not it's hard to describe, right? It's like a positive, it's partially like just high energy. So we talk a lot about the three I's. Maybe we'll use this framework. So integrity, intensity, and intelligence. And Jake was off the Richter scale for all of them, right? Like super intelligent guy, really intense, like high energy, passionate about what he was doing, would work his ass off, would sit in the factory and stuff boxes and make the bars himself if that's what it was required. Like just intense, high energy. And then integrity. Like he had a pretty significant snafu at some point during his kind of initial growth, and we don't want to talk about it too much, but like the way he handled that situation, we were just like, this is a high integrity person at this age to have handled that situation in this way. Is really impressive. So like he had hit like a manufacturing snafu and there was like an issue and whatever, and like ended up being resolved and totally fine. But we looked at those three things and we're like, all right, across our matrix of the three eyes, he's just scoring off the charts. And we both came out of the conversation, my partner Sean and I, independent conversations, being like, oh my gosh, how impressive was that guy? Um, so you put those things together and you're like, okay, this is something that we can get really excited about.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. It's cool to like have these portfolio stories because ultimately they sell the next founder on joining you or incubating around like your thesis, and they become models for the future or, other investors to think you might be a good person to invest alongside them. So, um, yeah, I've thought a lot about like not starting a fund personally, but people who start funds, like the first, I have to imagine 5 to 10 investments you make are like incredibly important, and it builds the culture of your fund, or first fund, and sets the standard with LPs for how you're thinking. So that's awesome, Willie. What's the future for you? Like you can't predict too far out, but like long term, given how you're thinking now, you're a year and a half into the fund. Like, what does Willie want for Willie over the next few years as you continue to build your family?
Yeah, I mean, like, I wanna be able to keep doing what I'm doing. I'd love to have mm, be a little bigger on the venture side so that we could be a little bit more flexible and do things a little faster and add some teammates and things like that. So, continuing to kind of scale on the venture side, but like really just like trying to find a mix between like fulfilling hard work and like spending as much time as I think is mandatory with my family. So it's a constant balance. Where I make this joke to my wife all the time, but it's like I'm trying to be the best professional I possibly can be, the best dad I can possibly be, the best husband I can possibly be. I'm also trying to work out every day and get 8 hours of sleep and see my friends occasionally. And it's like that's just really fucking hard. Like like that it's just really hard to do all of those things. So right now that's my focus is like, hey, how do I handle all those things in priority order and make sure that like I'm continuing to move the ball down the field.
Yeah. Dude, it's great, man. I mean, look, I think we all have these pillars of prioritization in our life: family, our health, our work, social friends, are taking care of ourselves and rest and, part of health. Like, hard to do 3 or 4 pillars really well, and be good at all of them all the time. So, um, sounds like your wife, given you met her in college, has learned the roller coaster with you. Whether I'm not saying she loves it or doesn't love it, but it sounds like she's learned.
She's very calm. She's a very calm person. So, it's
Let me ask you
been
another question. Do you think you could have done it without her?
no. Could
No.
never have done it without her. Never in a million years. Well, like here's
Why?
two reasons. First off, she's 1,000 times smarter than me. So like what people don't know is that she's worked in every business I've ever been a part of. She has a formal role at Press On Ventures because we like had to officially let people know that she's actually the secret sauce behind everything. But she's been involved in, she worked box offices for Squadup, where she would literally stand in a kiosk and scan tickets. Mind you, she's a master's from Northwestern in machine learning. She went to Duke University. Like she did not need to be doing that. Um, so yeah, like no, I would not have been able to get through any of this without Madeline.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's really cool to hear. I was talking to my buddy Evan, who's an engineer out of the exit, and he's on a new startup, and we were talking about relationships and founding things, and he said all of his successful founder friends have had an exit, like had someone by their side throughout the journey. And he said, I think there's a data point to that. And there's also the counter narrative for not doing that. Um, but it's nice to hear like both can be true, or it's nice to hear that someone that you pick can share in the sacrifice with you. And it sounds like your wife is shared in the sacrifice with you to make everything possible. And like,
She certainly has.
what a rewarding relationship. Willie, this has been a total treat. Have I missed anything? Do you want to share something I didn't ask about? Like you have the floor. What do you want to close out on?
No, I think we've covered everything, Brian. I'm really glad you invited me on today. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, let me know if you ever want me to come back.
Yeah, maybe we'll do it next time in person in a studio and make it all happen. But I think this was a great part one.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. We'll speak to you soon.
Sounds good. Willie, where can people find you? Website?
You can find me at presson.vc. You can also find me on X at Willie Lit, just WILIELIT.
Cool. Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Thanks, y'all.